Okay, we're rolling. Let me have you introduce yourself, first and last name, where you live, and your title with the museum.
I'm Kirsten Bergen. I live in Glenview, Illinois, and I'm the Vice President of Operations of Glenview Hangar One Foundation.
Okay, and your name, sir?
I am Tommy Fitzgibbon. I live in Glenview. I am the president of the Hangar One Museum, or the Hangar One Foundation.
Yes, and I notice you're wearing a jacket. Have either one of you served in the military or the Navy?
I served on the base with VP 60 from 1970 until the base closed in 95.
Thank you very much for your service.
You're welcome, sir.
So where are we at now? What is this building? Where are we at?
We are at the Naval Air Station Glenview Museum. This is located on Lehigh Avenue in Glenview, and it is open to the public on the weekends, and it preserves the history of Naval Air Station Glenview and Glenview Civilian Aviation.
Okay, and how is the museum funded? How do you pay the rent?
Well,
It's donations.
Yeah, it's all volunteer.
It's all volunteer. I am one of the docents, the people who come here on the weekends to take people around and show them the artifacts that we've collected here in the museum.
Okay. Now, I know that, how much money is available? How much do you pay rent here?
The rent annually is around $20,000 a year that
Right.
we're paying right now. It did go up recently, so it's been an increased cost that we've had to absorb.
Plus
Okay.
utilities as well.
And
Insurance.
Yeah, and just roughly how much would you say available money do you have? Let's just say donation stop now. How much money do you have available?
Well, I mean, I think that's something where it's enough to keep us going for a little while, but it is not enough for us to relocate.
Okay.
And the space that we're in, we don't have long-term availability
Right.
necessarily here. We're on a short-term lease, and we have a good relationship with our landlords, but at the same time, we're in a site that is not big enough for our collection, and we have had, it is a warehouse site, and we've had some
Right.
issues with the collection being damaged. So it is imperative that we find a new location for the museum where we can properly display it and include the type of events and programming for the
Does the foundation or museum have other items that are not on display because of space availability?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we have a helicopter that's parked in the back lot that we can't display internally because there's not enough space. Plus, we have a number of both artifacts from the history, including books and manuals and pictures that we just don't have enough place to display.
And I would say also a lot of the artifacts that we have in here, there isn't enough space to tell the story in a way that somebody could walk through. And in a lot of museums you go into and you will see that there is an artifact on display and then there's a story next to it. That's not something that we have the ability to do. We also have artifacts that need restoration and we don't have the space to do that. We have a couple of trainers which were incredibly important to train pilots during World War II on instruments.
Link trainers.
Link trainers, and so those need to be restored. We do not have the space or the resources to do that, so a larger space would allow us to do that, which would be not only a wonderful thing to preserve those artifacts, but an incredible learning experience for the public and just a wonderful thing for the community to get behind.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You could speak just a tin louder, not much louder, a little bit. So
Can
I
I
was.
ask you a question?
Yes.
Should I be looking at you or the camera?
The camera or both. Let me get down here so it makes it a little bit
Oh,
easier.
okay.
Yeah. TV guys like you to look at the reporter, and they made us do that newspaper. Even when there wasn't a reporter there, we would kind of pretend like there was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, news teams for some reason don't want you looking. I don't know why. I like both. I think look at the camera works good. So I was here last week, just visiting for the very first time, and there was a family walking around, and I started talking with them. It turns out their son had just graduated the Naval Academy, and they decided to come here. So I thought that was a wonderful thing that people could do that are visiting their sons during graduation. And Somebody mentioned or thought that kind of brings tourism to Glenview from people from surrounding suburbs. Do you think there is a little bit of that where people do come here and this would be, I guess I hate to use the terminology because it sounds like it's less important. I don't know how it sounds, but would you consider this a little bit of a tourist attraction for Glenview?
Absolutely. I chair or have chaired and currently on the committee for a reunion for my squadron. And last July, this past couple of months, we had around 100 of my former shipmates and their spouses that came down and toured the museum and spent time at the Glen. I mean, it was a one-day event, but nonetheless, I think there is that opportunity to draw attention to both the Glenview area as well as the history of the Naval Air Station.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. When I first got involved in helping to preserve the history of the Naval Air Station, one of the things that I did was started an online petition to try and petition our village to find a space, set land aside, a building, in order to house a larger museum. And one of the most incredible things was that we had signatures, not just, I mean, we had many, many local signatures. We had over 1,000 signatures, and many of them were from across the United States and from 8 foreign countries. And I remember there was one comment that somebody added where they said, "I live in England, but if you build this, I will come and visit." And I just thought that was such a acknowledgement of the fact that this is certainly local history, but it is also American history and world history. What happened at this air station and was incredibly important, not just in World War II, but for the 20th century aviation and the history of world events. So, yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the support the Village of Glenview has provided. Have you ever received any funds or to help pay for what rent or whatever your expenses might be? Have you ever received any funds from the Village of Glenview?
To my knowledge, we
No.
have not.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, when the base was acquired by the village, there's a commitment in that contract that they're supposed to preserve, if you will.
Yes. The when there was a Glen redevelopment project, and it had about 8 primary goals of it, and one of them was developing the former Naval Air Station in a way that helped preserve and reflect the rich history of Naval Air Station Glenview. So we feel like that's, the village did a terrific job of redeveloping this space, making it something that's an asset to the community. But I think it's just not complete. There's one more step that needs to happen, and that is truly preserving the rich history. And while there are certain things in the Glen which do reflect this history, you have the tower and you have some plaques, and there are things that kind of recall the history to some extent. What you don't have is the actual substantive history being preserved. And so I think that's what this museum and our docents who interact with the public provide, is the actual substantive history behind it, which is so incredibly important.
That goes from the 1930s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and into the 1990s. So this is like 60 years or better of history of the military being here in Glenview in various forms.
Yeah, and it's incredible, truly, the fact that the tower was preserved and that people even know that there was a Naval Air Station here is in large part due to the efforts of veterans and local community members who spoke up and said, we need to preserve this. And so that's why we still have these. So Hangar 1 has a very rich tradition of being a leader in trying to preserve this history.
And it's an all-volunteer group. I mean,
all volunteer, completely donation funded.
Okay, you mentioned the tower, which I do have some questions of, but I get sidetracked myself. So let's stick with what we're doing. We were talking about the funding. Have you ever requested or asked the village for help with funding?
We have spoken with the village numerous times over the past 3 decades since the air station closed. And we are always looking to try and find a partnership that's a win-win. So, you know, if there's something that works for the village that allows us to preserve this history and the museum in a way that works, that's what we're hopeful for. So we've had several conversations, most recently this past year. We've been talking to the village, and we're hopeful that there will be a new chapter for the museum. But as of yet, there is no concrete commitment from the village
Right.
as far as space or funding.
Have you ever went to a board meeting and asked for funding or help?
I have, actually, when one of the last parcels of the former air base came up for disposition, it was parcel 24 back in 2012. I actually was one of, I believe, 9 or 10 developers, people who submitted a response to the request for proposals. So I had an opportunity to get up in front of the village trustees, in front of the village board, and make an argument for preserving about 2 to 3 acres of parcel 24 for this. So yes, we have spoken to the village in closed meetings, we've spoken to the village in public meetings, and there's always an appreciation for this history, but I think we're always trying to look for a way to have that convert into action, and that's what we haven't been able to bring about yet.
Good ideas, but no execution, I think is what
Okay.
what
And
Kirsten
you
would love to
mentioned
say.
something about you requested some parcel, something.
Yes.
Was that done?
No, it was not. That space was turned into housing and into a development of another nonprofit of the Willow Creek Community Church.
Okay, and I won't put anybody on the spot. I don't know how long the current officials have been there. Would you say you've talked to people that are currently working for the village or elected officials? Have you spoken to current people, or have requests been recent?
Yes. We formed a task force earlier this year, which was something where our organization, the village, the library, and the Glenview History Center all had a couple people come together about once a month for over a 6-month period to really talk about what the options might be, because we've really come to a point where we're at an inflection point. A lot of our members in our board are, we're
Aging
getting up
out.
in age.
Yes.
And like I said, we're in a situation where we're in a location that isn't a long-term sustainable situation. So we do need to move, but without having someplace to go, we're at that inflection point. So we did share this with the village, and so we're at a point now where we're going to be doing inventory, and really in the next 6 months probably deciding whether the next step is shutting the museum down and reallocating the assets to other museums who can display them, or whether there might possibly be a way to partner with the village and move forward with a new location. So yes, we've been in conversations with them on a monthly basis for the past year.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, especially since you said there hasn't been a decision made and there's going to be meetings. So I guess you said there's going to be meetings to make a decision, possibly staying open, possibly getting the artifacts to other museums, and possibly having to shut down the museum. Is that already a planned date, or just something that you think is planned for the future, or a couple months from now? Is it scheduled?
I would say there's not a planned date, there's not a schedule.
No.
We are right now meeting with archivists to work through the collection, make sure we know what we have, and whatever direction we end up going, that will help inform it. Our goal, like I said, since we're on a short-term lease, we are always trying to be cognizant of the fact that it is better to come to a decision sooner rather than later. We don't want to be caught short where
Right.
we have to do something in an emergency situation.
Right.
So I think the feeling is just we are moving forward with deliberate speed, trying not to have unnecessary delays in what we're doing. And as soon as we can move forward, we want to. So.
Okay. And then when was the last time you went to a board meeting or asked the village for some type of assistance? Was that a month ago or a year ago, or?
A formal board meeting? Well,
Oh no, just in general. Any kind of communication.
That was,
gotcha.
the task force met not quite a month ago.
The end of October, we had our task force meeting. Earlier the month before in September, I actually was able to have a meeting with 2 members of the village staff, as well as a member of the History Center. So we've had an opportunity to have conversations, and like I said, there's always a lot of recognition and positivity about the importance of the history. That's never seems to be in question. I think the issue is, how do we translate that into action?
It's the execution part of things that gets in
yeah.
the way.
No, I understand that. I know you mentioned, or you're kind of hopeful, or eyeing would be a good word. The space that's underneath the tower itself. I've seen the exterior of that, and it does seem like a pretty good size space that wouldn't be very low priced. If the village got involved with helping you obtain that space, who are you thinking is going? Is that space owned by the mall or owned by the village?
The space is owned, I believe, by the
Realtor.
the entities that own the Glen, as
Right.
far as a retail space. My understanding is it is available either for rent or for purchase. I believe the purchase price is somewhere around $5 million.
Right.
Okay.
And
Oh
so
no, so for $5 million they would own it.
that is my
Well,
understanding.
Yeah, and would have to pay insurance or other fees, but they would own it.
for the 10,000
Yeah,
square
yeah,
foot.
that actually seems like a good deal. I walked past it and the space seems very large.
Yeah, it's been empty a long time.
It has. We did just a fairly informal Google search of retail space costs in Glenview, and it does seem to be within those market parameters, so it does not seem something that is out of the question.
Right.
Our hope is that maybe there might be able to have more conversation about that, because I think we do feel that the way this museum could really sing and could really inspire a next generation to know this history and learn from it and have pride in it, is to have it in a location that really resonates with the history, and that would be under the tower.
Yes.
Or as close as we could be to.
Yeah.
And that would allow you to have interactive things which would interest younger kids. I know everything here interests me. Little kids have a different interest, but if there's something interactive to do, they can learn for it. You would like that space, and you would be interested in either having the village purchase it or pay rent. Is there any way that if the village did decide just to lease it or rent it, is the foundation in a position to contribute some money to that money? And if so, about how much?
Well, I think what we've said to them is that we could continue to do what we do now, which is the rent that we are paying here is something that if the village needed us to do that in the new location, we could do that. However, I think there's also a bigger question of, could that money be put to better use. Restoring, so if we could have a partnership where the space was something that the village was in the village's column, right, exactly, and then we would focus on what is in the interior as far as presenting the history and preserving the artifacts and restoring them. That would be a wonderful partnership that we could do. And hopefully that dollar amount, like I said, it's not a huge amount. So.
Well, yeah, and
It's a lot for us.
we've had at least cursory response that the village isn't interested in doing that. I mean, they basically said no.
But it's at the moment it's been a no. But I don't know. We don't like to take no for an answer.
No,
so
we
we're
have
hoping
not.
that we can.
After 30 years, we're
hoping
still here.
we can have evolution and get to the point where everyone sees it as a win-win.
Right.
And we can really bring something unique. I mean, that's the thing, really, because there's a lot of towns around here. You want to find reasons to have people come to your town, and what Glenview has is incredibly unique. I mean, there is nothing like this history anywhere.
Right.
It is singular, and it is incredibly important. So. It's also something that and we've had kids involved, we've done programming with kids, they are fascinated by this, they are proud of what they learn about what happened in their hometown and how it affected the world. And so that's something that, there's, it is a draw, whether you want to call it a point of interest or a tourist attraction or whatever it is, I think it would be a benefit.
I think point of interest, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I belong to show you how well this is known, not the museum, but the whole history, and specifically the Navy the Navy Aero Station, if I'm saying that correctly. I belong to a Facebook group called Original Chicago. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but it has 500,000 members, and anytime I show a picture or anything regarding the museum, it gets a lot of likes, a lot of comments. People are very proud of it, and it is a really, really big deal in just little old Glenview. And I do agree with you, a fact of Glenview. I think it is a wonderful town. I lived here 31 years. I actually think it's prime location of all the suburbs because we're right in between the state line, the city. We're not too far west. I think Glenview could actually be the #1 restaurant destination in the suburbs. It's not now. It's not bad, but it's not the number. I don't know if there is a #1, but it could be. So let me ask you, the people, I came here last Saturday and there was a woman working. Is she a paid employee or is that a volunteer?
They're all the docents are volunteers. All of us.
Okay.
On the board
We
are
don't have
volunteers.
any paid employees. We run at a very, very lean budget. It's, our biggest expense is our rent,
the rent.
our utilities. We do fundraisers through mail twice a year. And those are our main expenses. We really just try and whatever we need to do to maintain the collection and keep the facility,
Okay. And I know you have a website. Is there a way that residents of Glenview or other places or anywhere can somehow join the organization without contributing? Just be a member? Is there a fee for that or not?
We do encourage. As far as membership, we don't have something that people are that is event based.
Okay.
But as far as people come and supporting the museum with donations, that is really what membership involves. Like I said, there's no charge to come to the museum.
No,
it's open to the public.
You can join as a member for a very nominal.
Okay. I'll be involved with it.
Yeah.
Now, does the museum or the foundation have a Facebook page?
We do.
What are those?
The Facebook page?
Yeah, so you're saying the museum has one and somebody could find that just by searching
Yeah,
Navy
hey,
Museum and it'll
yeah.
pop up on Facebook and
Hey,
somebody
one.
could like your
Yes,
page.
and I believe our website has a link to it. As
Yeah.
Oh,
well.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the foundation would be separate or that's kind of together?
No, it's together.
Yeah.
Yeah, the foundation is simply the tax exempt organization that runs the museum.
The
So
financial,
it's,
part of it.
Okay.
board.
Yeah, and now I'm going to ask kind of a direct question. I'm going to try to use correct terminology. Has the village ever promised or said something? I know you said they said stuff that didn't happen. I think you said that. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I'm looking into it. But have they told you things that you thought probably weren't true? Or where are we at with that?
No, I don't think they've said anything that isn't true.
Okay.
I think what we were saying was early on in the development plan for the former Naval Air Station, there was a commitment on the part of the village to preserve the history of Naval Air Station Glenview.
Okay.
And that has, I don't think they've
And I
lived
think
up to that.
sometimes it's a matter of how do you interpret that, right?
Right.
And some people would say, well, the tower is there and there are some plaques around and there are visual references to what was here before. But I think what you will find is that when you ask people questions about the substance, that's where it's clear that really preserving the images is not the same as preserving the substantive history. And I think one way you can do that, and I did this with my kids when I was young. We were out in front of the tower and we were asking passersby if they knew why the two streets on either side of the tower were named Wolverine and Sable. And there wasn't a single person walking by who could tell us that.
Yes.
And if you're familiar with the history of Naval Air Station Glenview, those would be two names that would be very familiar to you. Those are not facts that you have to dig to find. Those are the names of the two aircraft carriers, the converted steamships that were docked at Navy Pier. And that is where our pilots trained during World War II, primarily impacting the course of the war in the Pacific. So the USS Wolverine and the USS Sable are incredibly important components of the history of Naval Air Station Glenview. So, and that is why those two streets are named on either side of the tower. But to a person that we talked to, nobody could tell you why those were. And so I think that's where we see preserving the history to involve preserving the actual rich substance, not just the visual images that, yes, at one point there was an air station here.
Okay, and you mentioned that I missed the name of it, but some type of group that meets once in a while, and you have a meeting coming up soon. Do village officials go to those meetings,
Yes.
and do you expect them at the next meeting?
Yes.
The task force meeting,
Yes.
Are there members of the village that are in the task force?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
And the library and the history center.
okay,
There's three groups that really have been meeting.
you mean the History Museum on Waukegan?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Glenview
Yeah.
History Center, the Glenview Public Library, the Village of Glenview, and Hangar One Foundation got together this year and formed
Okay.
this task force. So right now we've paused the meetings while we take a moment to do our inventory and cataloging, because that's come up, and that was one of the valuable things that came out of the task force, and we're very grateful that these parties did sit down to talk with us. Was that it became clear that people felt that they may not know what we have, and so there is value to us being able to share that through a more conventional cataloging of our inventory. So that's what we're doing. We're working on that phase, and we hope to have that phase done in about 3 to 4
We've
months.
met with an archivist who's
Yeah.
committed to giving us a proposal on how they could provide an inventory of the materials that we have.
Okay, is the museum on property that was the Naval Air Station? Or
Just
not?
adjacent.
It's right behind.
Okay, so you're currently not even on property that was the Naval Air Station.
We're on the perimeter. So this corridor, industrial corridor, Lehigh Avenue, has been here
a
a
long
long
time.
Okay.
time, since before the air station.
Yeah, but if you look out the back door, there's a fence. That was the
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
the
right
border.
up to. Right up
Okay,
to here.
and the task force meetings, I'm not trying to flood you with too many people where you couldn't accommodate them, but can the public come to those meetings?
They were really just working meetings.
Yeah.
with-
Okay, like a smaller room or
small
somewhere at the
group,
library,
yeah,
not really
yeah.
meant for a general public
No,
thing.
we met at the public library the last time,
The
but we've
last
met
one,
at the
yeah.
village. We've met here, so yeah.
Yeah, we're really, I mean, I think it's a situation where everybody, like I said before, everyone's aligned in seeing value to preserving the history. It's just trying to come up with a solution that makes sense and works for all the entities involved. And so it's something where it really is a working group meeting, and our hope is that we come up with a solution, you know?
Okay, and do you know, are you aware that the Historical Museum, the one on Waukegan, I'm probably saying their name right, that they have recently got some funding? I know two numbers, and I'm not gonna say them because two numbers is not correct. The lower number that I know is 5 million. The other number is quite a bit higher. So I'm not sure, I've read it in articles. And I've driven by there and taken pictures, and there's massive construction and stuff going on. So they must have got some funding from somewhere. So you further think if Glenview's going to help them, or provide funding for that history, that there should be some funding for the Navy, some help with the museum, the Navy Museum?
Well,
We would hope so.
Okay.
I'll jump in and I'll say this. Like, I can't speak to the actual numbers. I do know that both the village and the history center have been very forthcoming about the fact that the village is involved with helping with the renovation.
Oh yeah, it's public documents. Now, do you know what the permanent fund is? Have you heard of that?
The permanent fund is.
Yeah,
Yes, I do.
I know enough to get myself in trouble about it. Yeah, which is funny. So I don't want to say too much. I have requested that the village give me a copy of that, and they handed me a form, because I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I'm just trying to see what is. I think it was, well, this part I do know. I had a trustee tell me that funding can be used for, he said downtown, but I'm pretty sure he said can be used for anything in Glenview as long as it's not on the Glen. It cannot be used for that. I have my suspicions why, but again, I'm not going to talk about suspicions because I didn't ask them why. If I ask, maybe they'll tell me. Do you know how that funding has been used recently in the last 2 to 4 months? And what amounts of money have been given to, I'll give them a polite name, entrepreneurs, have been given to people that want to open restaurants in Glenview. Are you aware that's taking place?
Yeah.
And the amount of money that they've been given in either grants or something that's called forgivable loans?
Yes.
Yeah,
we are
it's
aware of this.
it's public record and has been published, but it's in the millions.
Yeah, yeah.
It's-
Oh, you're
it's
right,
about
and that's not taxpayer dollars. I don't know where it came from.
Well-
Do you know?
Yes.
Okay.
So my understanding is, and I was not involved with Hangar One at that time, but my understanding is at least a good part of the corpus of the permanent fund did come from the sale of
Land.
the former Naval Air Station to developers. So really, it's money that came from the sale of Hangar One. So the building that was the heart of Naval Air Station, Glenview, was Hangar One. And Hangar One was slated, I believe, to be demolished. And it was architecturally a very important building by a local iconic architect. And so what happened was a group of citizens and former service members got together and formed a Save the Tower organization. And they were able to get a restraining order to prevent the tower from being completely demolished. So what happened was then the Save the Tower Foundation was able to get the Hangar One building on the National Historic Registry as a National Historic Building. Unfortunately, after that, approximately 90 to 95% of the building was demolished. What remains is the tower and part of the facade. So when that was demolished and sold to developers, our understanding is a good part of that money did go into the permanent fund. And so the money that is in the permanent fund is actually from the destruction and sale of
The building.
Which was
And
the
I was
National
always
Historic
confused, what is Hangar One and what is the tower? And is that just one thing? And from what you said, I gather that the tower is part of that,
Part of
but
Hangar
it's bigger than that.
Yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
did I hear you correctly that Hangar One itself, the whole thing, whatever that is, was labeled as an historic landmark, and yet still some of it was destructed?
It was, I don't know, I want to be careful with the wording because I don't know there was a historic landmark, but it was on the National Registry of Historic.
Okay, that might be different. You're right.
National Registry of Historic Buildings.
Okay, and did the you wanted to save the I call it the Blue Air Tower, just so people can know what I'm talking about, right? It's
Yeah.
blue. It's beautiful. So the village wasn't so keen on saving that, and I don't know about the developers. Did you go to court to keep that, or did it not go to court and it was done some other way?
No, it was done through the petition with the national landmark historic landmark group in Washington. There was a petition to do that.
Well, I believe there might have been a temporary restraining order.
No, I believe that's correct.
This predates my involvement, so I'm going by what I understand from people who.
So there might have been a restraining order.
I
Is
believe
that
there was.
expired? Or is there something dead in writing where, I'm not saying they want to, but if somebody wanted to take that down, could they?
Not today.
Well, it's already gone.
No, I'm talking. Oh, you're right. The hangar is gone. Yes, that's why I need to understand what's the tower and what's the hangar.
Right.
So could the tower be taken down now if somebody wanted to? I wouldn't see a reason. I don't think it costs a lot of money, but could they if they wanted to?
I would say that's probably between the village and the business entity that owns the retail space there. I don't know what the understanding.
You don't know what? Yeah, me neither. I don't know whether. Yeah, you're right. It would be up to them to try to do it, and then I don't know if there's something preventing them from doing it.
I haven't heard anyone talking about.
Oh, no,
doing
no,
that,
no,
so-
me neither. There's no suggestion. And I'm assuming strongly that it really doesn't cost anything and it's beautiful. And I bet the village people love it as much as you do and as much as the residents do.
It's a landmark. I mean, that's where I'll meet you at the tower.
Oh,
Well,
you
that's,
can see it from a couple miles away. I
Yeah,
read
I
an
know.
article this morning. I don't know if it's a news article. It looks like an article, but I don't recognize the name. But somebody said they actually got lost somewhere in Glenview, and that's back. I think the article was written a while ago before GPS phones, and they actually refound their way by
looking at the
spotting the
tower.
tower. And I was recently almost at Target, and I looked through some trees really distantly, and I saw it.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to say, or anything that maybe I missed?
Did you want to mention anything about the Park District or not?
Sure, we can go into that. We one of the things that we did after I had advocated in front of the village board in 2012 was we met with the village in a private debriefing meeting, and they suggested that we reach out to the Park District to see if there might be an opportunity to move forward with a project there. And I think one of the reasons that made sense to us at the time was that Glenview and the Park District does a very nice job of preserving eras of Glenview's history. We have the Grove, which is really the
Phenomenal.
pioneering era, the first 100 years of the village. Then we have Wagner Farm, which is really the next 100 years of our village's history. And what is missing is the 20th century, which was when aviation was part of Glenview's history, and it was a military town. And so it's kind of the missing piece of the 300 years of our community. And so we reached out to the Park District, and we actually had a working relationship over a period of about 7 years between 2013 and 2020, where the Park District expressed an interest in moving forward with something, and what we envisioned was something very similar to the way it's done with the Grove and Wagner Farm, which is a site that people can go to. It's owned by the Park District. And so we worked with them. They said they were interested. They wanted us to help demonstrate that there was awareness of the history, demand for the facility, demand for the programming. So we did events, we did programming, we worked collaboratively, we came up with...
we spent a lot of money.
A lot of time.
We developed a feasibility study.
We put together a feasibility study.
It was not cheap for us to do that.
Well, we worked with a lot of wonderful organizations and businesses around here, with iconic architecture firms and with local construction companies, to make sure that what we were putting together was made sense. We had our T's crossed, our I's dotted. Unfortunately, that was voted down by the Park District in 2020. And so that project...
Was that a vote by the board?
By the board of the Park District.
Well, I love Wagner Farms. I take my grandkids there. I love the Grove. I've been going there forever. They used to do a Civil War reenactment that I would photograph. For one reason or another, that stopped, but I don't know why. But I just think the Grove is a wonderful place, and they do a lot of wonderful stuff. So the Park District does do some wonderful stuff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think your idea of getting them, I never thought of that. You just floored me by even bringing that up, because I've had a lot of ideas, and that wasn't even remotely thought of. That's almost borderline perfect.
Yeah, and we actually, so the feasibility study was about a roughly 16,000 square foot facility that would sit at the south side of Lake Glenview, in between a TM Middle School and the Park Center. And it would have display space as well as educational space, and really making it a multi-purpose use that preserved this history, and even room for rotating exhibits with aircrafts coming in and out.
And you just gave me an idea. Again, I think I know some stuff about the permanent fund. Don't quote me, and let me first just say that I could be wrong. So I would recommend that people look stuff up for themselves. I'm a reporter, and I do that with TV news. The first thing when I hear something on TV news is I jump on my phone. I don't go to their website. I try to go to the source, and just like a college, university, a person, try to see what they say. And then sometimes I make judgments. Sometimes I don't. Now, you're not in the Glen, correct?
We are not. We are on the perimeter.
So according to what I know, you could qualify for trying to get some of the permanent fund, because it's for anything. From my understanding, again, don't quote me, don't write this down. I don't know it to be in stone, but it's been told to me. I didn't make it up. I didn't read it. Somebody told me that's pretty high up there. I'm not going to flag them out, but that it can be used for anything on Glenview, specifically development. I tried to get involved and get some money to fund my social media work. And I thought I'm kind of naive. I thought the word permanent meant the fund is permanently around. And they kind of giggled at me because they said the word permanent means building or means permanent building. Right. Now, you would be a building.
Yes.
I don't really think any of the spaces on Glenview Road would be big enough for you, but there certainly are some spaces that are empty that are together. And then one place I'm thinking of, what interest would you have in being downtown Glenview?
I think we have an interest in any solution that helps preserve this history. That's the mission of our organization, is to preserve and honor the history of Naval Air Station Glenview and Glenview civilian aviation. So I think any solution that allows us to do that, because we really are at a point where there will either be a new chapter in a new location, or we will likely have to close down. And if we close down, then the question arises of where will people learn this history? Will this history be lost? And so any solution that is workable that involves that. Now, our hope would be that we would be able to be on a site that was on the former Naval Air
Yes.
Station, but you know, we understand that sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. And so, you know, whether that would be a possibility or not, it's not something that, you know, we did ask when we met in the task force. We really left it open to the village to say, like, you let us know what sites you think would be appropriate. And so unfortunately, at the end of that, there wasn't any particular site that the village had come up with. And I will say this too, that I think our village does a good job of supporting local businesses, local nonprofits. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Coles Children Museum sits on about 8.5 acres that were given to Coles when the air base closed. So that's a pretty impressive donation of land
Oh,
to
yes,
a
yeah.
nonprofit.
Yeah.
Also, Youth Services, I believe, sits on 1.5 acres, which was
Right.
similarly donated to them. The financial arrangement that was worked through with Willow Creek was actually a fairly beneficial one to the nonprofit. And we think those are all good things. We just think that that outreach should and hopefully will extend to the preservation of this history as well.
Without a doubt.
I think an argument could be made of all the nonprofit purposes
Yeah.
that should be in the Glen and in Glenview. This is certainly one of them.
Absolutely.
So we're hopeful to that. And yes, we are aware that there is a good deal of money between grants and loans being spent on local businesses, which again, we applaud that. It's a good thing. It's a good thing for our community. I don't think it's so much an either or, as I think as a community, we have the resources to preserve this history. We have the resources to create a permanent, appropriate museum for this history. It's just a question of whether we will do it or not.
Yeah.
And so we are always advocating for that. But there is, you know, after 30 years, you know, like we said, we are an aging organization, and there's a point at which we need to say, if we only have X amount of time left with the members that we have and
And
what
the
we have to
financial
do,
resources.
and the financial resources, we have to make sure we're being good stewards of this
Right.
history and these artifacts. So if we are not able to keep doing this, we need to find new homes for things. So that's
Yes,
kind of
if you
the
close down,
urgency.
you don't want them just to go wherever or
Right.
disappear. You want to know where they
If they
went,
can't be
and,
here.
and they need to go to the correct place. They don't want to be sold on eBay.
Right.
And I will
Yeah.
say one of the most
Or given to Goodwill.
Yeah.
one of the most incredible things that we could do. So, to people who know the history, that during World War II, and we're here on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day.
Yes.
So we want to honor that and recognize what this country went through. After Pearl Harbor, activity at Glenview increased greatly because there was a realization that we needed pilots to serve in the war, and so it was decided that it wasn't safe to be training them on carriers in the Pacific or the
Pacific,
Atlantic.
yep.
And so they had this incredible idea to train them in Lake Michigan. And so you had the two retrofitted steamships, the C and B and the Greater Buffalo, where they sliced off the top decks and they fit them with landing
Flat
decks.
tops.
And they became the Wolverine and the Sable. And so, but these were retrofitted paddle wheel coal burning aircraft carriers, the Corn Belt fleet. And so they didn't have space for the planes or the pilots. And so what happened was that the planes and the pilots were in Glenview. And this was the Carrier Qualification Training Unit. And they would leave from Glenview, fly out over Lake Michigan and look for the carriers. And once they did 8 landings and takeoffs, they would get shipped off to the fleet. And it's an incredible history that speaks to the importance of this. And, you know, our hope is, it would be a tragedy. I think when people learn this history and the ingenuity, I think that's the most incredible thing about what was done here. The incredible ingenuity it showed.
Now, let me say this. The reason I came to the museum last Saturday is there's something I consider social media, but I think I've read where for some reason it's not considered a social media platform. It's called Nextdoor. I don't know. I don't remember their name, but somebody put 3 simple sentences. They said Glenview is in jeopardy of losing. I think they said 500 artifacts, and the next thing they said we should all help out and get them. And that was the whole thing. So I thought, one, it's probably not a scam because they didn't put a link where you could donate money. They were asking for help. They didn't say how you could help. They didn't mention the museum. They didn't. They weren't. There was 3 sentences. So it kind of said, well, maybe I should just go to the museum and just visit it and see if they know about this. So would you say that there is somewhat jeopardy of Glenview losing a lot of artifacts?
Yeah.
Not only losing the artifacts that we have, but if we were to able to get a permanent museum with a larger space, of those planes that went out during World War II and trained in the base, about 140, 150 of them ended up at the bottom of the lake. Many of them have been recovered. There's one at O'Hare, there's one at Midway, there's many at Pensacola. There, about 50 to 80 of these planes are on display at museums across the country. There's not a single one of these planes, though, that has come back to Glenview. And so that is our hope, is that it's not even just losing what we already have, but it's losing the opportunity. And when you think about it, the thing that always sits with me is what an incredible story to have one of these lost World War II planes finally complete its loop and return to home base at Glenview. And that's an incredible story. And we're going to miss out on the opportunity to do that if we don't take steps to preserve this history and create a museum that can house not just the stories that we've already have artifacts to tell, but all the stories that and they're incredible. I feel like every time I talk to a veteran who served here or somebody who's familiar with the history, I learn more about the impact of this air station, including the fact that there was a movie that came out a couple years ago, Devotion, about Jesse Leroy Brown. So he was the first African-American naval aviator. And he learned to fly at Glenview.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did. And there's an incredible book out there about the flight of Jesse Leroy Brown. And several chapters are about Glenview and his experience here. And it's an incredible learning tool also about civil rights, about breaking color barriers.
Gender barriers as well.
Yes, and gender barriers. I mean, in the early years before the Navy came here, and you had the Curtis Reynolds Wright Airfield, you had luminaries of early aviation who came here, including Amelia Earhart. And Amelia Earhart used to go to the schools in Glenview and speak to the children. And she would tell them things like, don't interrupt somebody when they're busy doing what you said was impossible. And what the children took away from that was that, I think what one of the kids said to their parents was, I learned that Amelia Earhart said to believe in myself. There are so many wonderful stories. There are so many incredible things that can be shared about the history of this air station and what it means from a greater perspective, whether it's the engineering ingenuity that was shown here, the incredible dedication. I got involved in this because the first time I came here with my children, I brought my father-in-law, who's a Navy veteran, came here with my kids, and I met a World War II veteran. And he shared with me this incredible history. He also shared with me the fact that he lied about his age when he was 16 to go serve in the Pacific. And he served for 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
And, it's that type of dedication. And what I said to him on that day, looking around this museum, I said, I'm going to fight as hard for you as you fought for me. And that's what all these people are trying. We're trying to preserve something that's important. And we do hope there's a way to partner with our local village to do that. I think that the community, we've had tremendous support from the community, raising their voices and saying this is something that should be saved.
Yeah. And have you always been at this location?
We've been here a long time, we were at one time on the Glen.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree with you. That blue tower above the museum and it looking really beautiful, I think would be a major tourist attraction, and you would actually get people from Chicago to come to Glenview that would not be here. And I really appreciate what you say.
And they can take the train out.
Yeah. I never thought of that. I really agree with you about the businesses being positive, that the two would certainly work together.
Yes.
People would come to the museum and then they would stop at a restaurant, or they would come to a restaurant and then they would stop at the museum.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know the museum is free. Have you ever thought about, it's kind of small now, but I'm sure you've never thought about charging a fee for here, or if you got to another
No,
location.
but I think if we, again, if we get into a different situation with a different operating environment, where we were doing larger things, that there might be an opportunity.
There would be a need for it.
You need to have a
Yeah,
business plan.
the proposal that we put together with the Park District, that would be something that would be,
Right.
that did have like a daily fee.
Okay.
Because it was, full-blown museum with staff, and,
Right.
there are costs that need to be
Yeah.
covered.
Right.
Well, that might be a first, because they don't charge for Wagner Farm and they don't charge anything at the Grove. That I know of. I've
Yeah.
gone there. They've never
I
asked.
think it's a matter too of, that was something that we worked closely with the Park District on the
Yeah,
finance. The
I don't
financial
think people
capacity.
would mind. I think it does somewhat make sense. You would want to do more, and to do more, you don't do more with.
I think whatever we can continue to provide without cost
Yes.
would be our preference.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there were an opportunity. And the other thing I'll say about the Park District proposal that we put together is we volunteered. The idea was we would fundraise the entire thing.
Yes.
So it was a $17 million fundraising goal, which
Is the Park District idea gone? When was the last time you talked to them?
Oh, Lord.
Yes, it was October, and to the point of looking at primary sources, I would encourage you, the Park District minutes from that meeting are on their website. So it was the end of October 2020, so I think October 27th.
Okay, and there's been no conversation since then.
No, they had passed a resolution prior to that saying that if we produced a successful feasibility study, they would allow us to move forward to the fundraising stage. We did produce a successful feasibility study, and they voted it down and rescinded the resolution. So
Okay, so they said if you do something, we will do something, and you did that, and they did not do the second part.
I
Or-
think
or-
that's a fair assessment.
That's a fair assessment.
Okay,
yes.
and when was the last time you spoke to anybody at the village?
Oh, well.
Oh, they come to your
October.
meeting?
Yeah,
No,
come to our meeting.
separate, go ahead.
Oh, just our meeting in October where we had the
Right.
task force.
Are any of the elected officials in that meeting?
In that meeting, I don't believe there was an elected
staff.
official, but I did meet with the village president in September.
And what did he say? What did you ask him?
He was certainly very appreciative of the history. We had put together a binder demonstrating community support, which we had, during the course of the 7 years with the Park District, we had people write letters, we had people sign petitions, we had pictures and photos from all the events that we did. There was Flight Fest, which was in the Glen. Over a 3-year period, we had this event. The Park District ran it, and we provided a lot of the substantive history for it. I think 7,000 people attended each one of those. I mean, it was very big. Anyway, we put together this binder, and I shared that with the people in the meeting with the village president, and he was not surprised at all that there was that much support for it. That he agreed it was important. So. Like I said, I think you get back to the fact that we're all on the same side of saying this is important history.
Yeah.
It's just trying to find a way to preserve this that creates that win-win for everybody.
Okay. And did he say anything about how that would happen? What he could do, or how the village could support you, or funding? You must have asked him questions. Did he give any ideas?
Nothing concrete. So it was kind of, we were still in the middle of the current task force meetings at that point. So, there was kind of a, let's see what we can do. And the proposal which the task force came back to us with primarily was a way to display some of the artifacts at various locations around the community, which we appreciate, and that's important. But our take on it was, it is important to have an actual museum for this, and because there is so much to share, and also just to pay appropriate
Recognition.
recognition of what
Acknowledgement.
happened here.
Yep.
Many people served here. People died at this location training here. People went on to serve in theaters of war and didn't come home. There is a real importance of preserving and honoring the service that went on here. I'm the daughter of a veteran. I am the daughter-in-law of a Navy veteran, and I'm the mother of a Marine. So service is very important to me, to my family, to people like Tommy, who we are very grateful for what they do for this country. And we all enjoy a great deal of freedom and security, but that comes at a cost. And for us as a community, I think that most people would agree that honoring that is something that should be a priority. And like I said, the Glen has been a wonderful redevelopment project, but it's not done. And it won't be complete until we actually do the thing that was part of that plan, and that is preserve this rich history. So it's a final to-do that needs to be done.
Yep.
Okay.
Checklist.
And when that meeting was there was a meeting and the village president was there and you talked a little bit with him. Has he contacted you since then?
No.
No. Have you? Okay. So there's been no contact. And just to wrap things up, because I want to make sure people understand one thing, you're certainly not saying at any point the village lied to you, but you are saying on numerous occasions there have been discussions or ideas or things somewhat kind of not, I won't use the word promise, but said might happen or we could do some stuff on numerous occasions and nothing has really happened. Would that be kind of true, or would you like to reword it?
I think it's probably more with the Park District that's true. Very true.
I feel like what happened with the Park District was something where I feel like we were told if we do X, then they'll do Y. We did X, and then they rescinded the resolution. So I do feel like in that situation that was a bit of feeling like the rug was pulled out from under us a little bit. I think with the village, it's more that there's been different ideas of what preserving the history means and trying to get on the same page. And so I wouldn't say that the village, to my understanding, I do believe also there were some conversations, particularly with regard to parcel 24, before 2008, when there were thoughts about what to do with it. I do believe there were some conversations about setting aside land for a museum, but I believe after the bubble and real estate, became an issue, I believe that the decision was perhaps made that impacted what would be done with it later, and that there may not be an opportunity to have civic space. So I think that we all are, I think, trying to do the right thing. I just think that sometimes we have a different sense of how we get there or what we do.
Well, and the commitment to get it there. I mean, we've lived up to the commitments that the Park District asked of us.
Yes,
We've lived up to the commitments that the village has asked of us. We have one more step, which is getting the archive list to them, and then we'll have to see whether or not there's a real commitment on the part of the village to do something.
Yeah, and I also want to be clear too that we're not asking for anyone to give us land. We're not asking anyone to give us $5 million. What we would love is a situation where the village would either find the space of something that they already own or would obtain a space, and we could have the museum in there and really work in a partnership where they can retain ownership. Like it's not about giving us that. We just want to work collaboratively to come up with a way to do this. And I think there could be a wonderful next chapter if we could find a way to do that.
Yeah.
But if we can't, we have to be good stewards of this history and find
a
other
home for it.
museums to display it.
Okay, I think I'm almost done. Let me just clarify one more thing. I know you specifically mentioned this already, by the way. So I know the museum did their commitments, and you did say the Park District not so much followed up. Would you also apply that to the village, or would you say right now that you wouldn't say that?
We've been doing a dance with the village for years. Now they've said in our task force, which is the village, the library, and the history center, is that they needed to know what we've got. So we're going to spend money that we probably don't have, but we'll find a way to
Spend
do it.
time and money. Yeah.
To hire an archivist to come in and do the formal list, and then we can see whether the village is going to commit beyond that.
Okay, then I want to ask you directly. Have you asked the village, when they said that, did you say, can you help us out with funding to do what you're requesting we do?
No.
Okay.
It was, I believe it was made clear to us that that would be our expense.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and I think I'm done. I do want to give you the opportunity, if you want to say anything else, if you think we've covered everything, whatever you would like to say.
I think what I would like to say is we can all be heroes in preserving this history. There are no good guys, there are no bad guys. We are not looking to point the finger. We're looking to build a bridge forward.
Right.
We're looking to do something that is good for everybody in this town, that is good for preserving the history of this country. So, that's our hope, is that there's a way to do that and that we can take words and move them into action.
Yes.
Okay, and is there anything else that you'd like to say, or would you think we covered everything?
I think we pretty much covered it. I think the only thing that I would say is that there are literally thousands of men and women who've served on this space over time who are still alive today, who would like to see something that's of a permanent nature that they can refer to for their friends and family as part of the history of their service here.
Okay, I did think of one question I asked. It's a pretty easy one. About how many people come visit a year, or however you like the word, a month, a year?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think on any given weekend, we probably have between 4 to 10 visitors, would
Okay.
you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Although,
And would you think if you were at underneath that blue tower and at a big new location with a bunch of interactive stuff for kids, you would certainly think that number would increase quite
yes.
a bit?
let's put it this way. We are in a location in the back of a warehouse in an industrial stretch that has no visibility. It has no pedestrian access. We do not have the funds to engage in any type of marketing or anything like that. So it would be a game changer to be in an accessible, visible location with pedestrian and easy access, to be in some place where people can easily come. There's no parking here. Let me put it this way. If you're coming to our museum, you have made a decision to come here.
That's right.
And you are going
On
out of your
purpose.
way to come here.
On purpose.
And we are grateful that,
Yes.
considering that, like, every single weekend, we have people coming through here
Yeah.
learning this history. And
From
when you
all over
consider
the
what-
world.
Right. Considering what they have to go to find us
Mm-hmm.
and to come to this, I think that speaks volumes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate everything
Thank
you've
you.
done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's shut things off.